In the bulletin recently, we've been posting the number of people at each Mass on Sunday, and then finally the total number. And the whole purpose behind this is to really bring to mind how many people we have registered in the parish and how many of those people actually come to Mass on Sunday. And so when you look at the numbers, some weeks about 1,500, depending on what's happening in Hershey, of course, and realizing we have 2,600 families in the parish. Not 2,600 people in the parish. 2,600 families are registered in the parish. And so to compare that. And so there's obviously some people who are not coming to Mass. And this is a trend that really goes across the country. And so this, for the next 6 weeks actually, I would like to talk about why Catholics are not coming to Mass, or why Catholics leave the Church, and why non-Catholics are unwilling to join the Church. There is an author, Patrick Madrid, and he lists the top 10 reasons why Catholics leave the Church or non-Catholics are unwilling to join the Church. And so those are what I want to touch on. You know, Jesus essentially is sending the message to us today. It's not enough to be a good person. This guy is a good person. He follows all those commandments. Jesus goes through them and he says, all these I've done from my youth. What else do you want from me? And Jesus could have said, well, nothing. You're doing it. Go home, you're in heaven, great, everything's fine. But that's not enough. He says, sell what you have, give the money to the poor, and come follow me. Now, we wonder sometimes why he didn't just say, give what you have to the poor. Well, in the ancient world, you could take back what you gave somebody. You could say, well, maybe I was lending it, or, you know, it was never really yours, you stole it. But if you sell what you have and you get cash money, and you take that cash money and give it to the poor, you're never going to see it again. It's total separation from those things that keep us from Christ. And that's what he's saying. So yes, you're a good person, that's great, but that's not enough. You have to follow me the way I want you to follow me. And God says he will be in his temple. God wants our worship of him and our gratitude. So it's not enough. I've heard it many times, I'm sure you have as well. Well, I don't go to church, or I'm not religious, or I'm not baptized, or I'm not this or that, but I'm a good person. Well, I'm telling you today, Jesus says that's not enough. And if Jesus is God, then God is saying it's not enough to be a good person. So what are these reasons? What are these reasons why Catholics leave the Church or really don't come to church, even if they're registered, even if they call themselves Catholic? Or non-Catholics are unwilling to join? Well, I think the first one, the top 10 reasons, is a disagreement with doctrine and dogma. And this could apply to non-Catholic Christians too. They disagree with the teachings of the Church. And what I've found in my experience, even with couples bringing them in, when one is Catholic and one is not, when you ask them what they disagree with, in my mind's eye, I would think, well, I disagree with that too. That's not our doctrine. If you ask an atheist, tell me about this God that you do not believe in, oftentimes the God that they tell you about is not the God we would believe in either, quite frankly. And so it's this misunderstanding most of the time with the Catholic doctrine. So that's the first one. The second one is a disagreement with the Church's teaching on moral issues. And this is a big one, especially among Catholics. And why not? I mean, think about it. If I can go to another church that calls themselves Christian and they'll let me do whatever I want to go to that church, really. It's very rare for someone to go from an easier lifestyle to a more strict lifestyle. It is. We like our comfort. We like our power. And so many Catholics might go to another church because that church allows them to live the lifestyle they choose. In other words, they can adapt the ideology to their lifestyle instead of adapting their lifestyle to the ideology. And many non-Catholic Christians will never join the Catholic Church because of such strict moral statutes that we keep. So those are two reasons. The third reason, which leads from that morality a little bit, is the scandal within the Church. That Catholics, that clergy, have caused scandal And so there's no way I'm going to be a part of that church. There's no way. You hear the Catholic Church these days, and it's synonymous with something going wrong in the world. We don't often hear that about the non-Catholic Christian churches. We really don't. You know, they won't say, oh, you know, the Methodist Church is controversial on this, or the Episcopalian Church is on this, or... No, we usually hear about the Catholic Church, we're the bad guy in the world, okay? Because there was scandal involved. But it really doesn't make any sense when you think about it. If you're going to follow a religion, you don't follow those that don't live it. You follow the ones that do. You know, thank God that the church didn't crumble after the betrayal of Judas. I mean, where would we have been if people started saying, well, Judas represents this new Christianity, we don't want to do that. So there's scandal in the church, which leads sometimes among people to a fourth reason, which is apathy. They just don't care. It's not a priority. Getting to the tournament today is a priority. Getting to the Big 33 is a big priority. Getting to the concert or whatever else we have to do is a priority. But it ain't a priority to spend an hour in church worshiping God. Or maybe I'm just not there in my life. My spirituality does not lend itself to a need for a God. Everything's going pretty good. When I have a crisis, then I'll find religion, or I'll find God, or I'll start to pray. Or, you know, God forbid, maybe they weren't raised with religion. So where do I start? I was never raised with faith, so how do I pray? Why do I even go to a church? What's the point of it? And so this kind of apathy, which is just an indifference, it's not a power in my life. A fifth reason is anger with the church. When I needed the church, they were not there for me. When my father died or my mother died, the priest didn't really console me, or I didn't feel that they really knew them, or they didn't do what they could have done. When our family was in need, physically or economically, whatever it might have been, the church wasn't there for me. And therefore, or at least I perceive it wasn't there for me. And I'm angry with the church, and therefore I can't go back. And I'm going to add a little tweak to that one. You know, sometimes people will bury their loved ones from a church, and they hear some of these church songs, and then they can't go back. They can't go back because every time they hear these church songs, it reminds them of that funeral. So I think we should institute 4 songs that are standard for every funeral. And then when we have Mass, we don't play those songs. And that way we could do that. Because I can understand that. We had loved ones who we, you know, were really close with. They died. And these were the songs we remember. This is the church they were buried in. It's hard. And the Lord understands our grief. But our loved one wants us to be here with them. Because we are closer to them in the Mass than we are anywhere else. Certainly closer than we would be at a cemetery. The last one, the 6th one for Catholics primarily, is anger with God. I'm just angry with God for what I've been dealt, and that it seems like I get pushed down all the time, and when I'm down I get kicked and everything else. I can never get a leg up. What kind of God is that would allow these people to suffer, would allow things to occur in the world? And so we're angry with God. Well, God can handle our anger. He can. But there has to come a time when we realize how much of this am I in control of, and how much of this is God in control of. How much could I do really to help myself? So those first 6 reasons apply primarily to Catholics. The last 4 reasons of this top 10 list are mostly for non-Catholics, but they kind of bleed over as well to Catholics. The first reason why I think non-Catholics will not enter the church is they misunderstand Catholic teaching. So, for instance, we've all heard it. We worship Mary, we worship the saints, etc., etc. And we say, well, why would they think that? Well, a buddy of mine who's Methodist, he's a very staunch Methodist, went down to Central America. And they were having parades to the Blessed Mother. He counted 90 statues of the Blessed Mother. Jesus was nowhere to be found. He was out that day, okay? So they saw this and they thought, oh my gosh, these people are definitely worshiping Mary. And I'd have to tell you, some of them might be worshiping Mary. But that's not the teachings of the church. You say the way that Catholics act and the teachings of the church can be different. There have been items that I brought up with him well, the Methodist Church teaches this, this, and this. And he says, no, they don't. And I could say, well, I've seen Methodists who are teaching. Well, that's not what our church teaches. You see, it's different when it's on the other foot. And so the same thing is true. I think they misunderstand some of our teachings. They have misconceptions. But unfortunately, it's because we've propagated some of those misconceptions. A second reason why non-Catholics will never join the church, and this might deal with us a little bit too, is because of prejudice. They were raised being prejudiced against the Catholic Church. One of our priests went to Messiah College one time to do an open forum, question and answer with the kids there. And there were Catholics and there were non-Catholics there. And he just stopped for a minute and he said, just let me ask you this. This is impromptu. How many of you who are not Catholic were raised being told that Catholics are going to hell? And most of them raised their hand. They were taught this. And then he said, how many of you who are Catholic were taught that Protestants were going to hell? And nobody raised their hand. I don't remember in grade school, Catholic grade school, ever being taught that, ever hearing about that. But for some reason, many non-Catholic Christians are taught that Catholics are going to hell, or that Catholicism is a cult, or any number of other things. And so when they get to their adult years, and the Catholic Church might be an option, it's automatically off the table because of these prejudices that exist. Which leads into the third reason why they won't join, and that's because of family issues. And this is on two different fronts. The first front is, I know non-Catholic Christians who have said to me, Father, I believe everything the Catholic Church teaches, and I'm ready to become a Catholic in a second, but not while my parents are alive. Because I don't want to disappoint them. Because I don't want to dishonor them. They raised me the best they could, and they thought their religion is the true faith, and it's an affront to them if I change my religion. Would that so many Catholics would think about that before they go to Protestantism. That they worry what their old Catholic parents will think that they convert. But it's true. Because they don't want to dishonor their family, they're going to wait till they die. And even when I tell them, once your parents die, they're going to know you changed over, okay? You're not keeping anything from them at this point. They're going to know it, and they will be happy about it. And the final reason is what we call, and this is among Catholics and non-Catholics alike, not being fed syndrome. And so people come to the church and they leave the same way they arrived. They think, well, I didn't get anything out of that at all. I'm not being fed spiritually, I'm not being fed emotionally or whatever else. And I think there's two parts to this as well. The first part is, we live in a world that wants to attract us to whatever they're doing. They're selling something. And so they must be entertaining and they must be engaging, and it's about us. They're trying to get us, the consumer. When we come into the Mass, it's not about us. It's about giving thanks that we got another chance at life today. It's about giving gratitude and asking forgiveness. It's about praising our Lord and asking for things that we need in our life. That's what it's about. I often wonder if those Christians in the early centuries who are cowering in the catacombs, wondering if tonight might be their last night as they celebrated the Mass, I wonder if they walked out of there that night or early in the morning saying, well, that wasn't too entertaining this week, or, that didn't give me anything. No, it was all about sacrifice, what they were sacrificing. On the other end of that, however, the not being fed syndrome, are those who are craving the truth. And the preacher, whether it's a priest or deacon, is not giving that. They're giving all the warm fuzzies and all the nice feelings so that we can come in and we can feel better about ourselves and go home and live like we're living already, with no intention of changing, with no reason for changing. That we have to preach the truth too, and we have to take care in order to form these. I remember speaking with another priest who had lunch with a Protestant minister. And they were talking about how the work goes and how they do things. And the Protestant minister said, I'm paid for 40 hours a week of work. And 20 of those hours is supposed to be for the Sunday sermon. 20 hours. That's what I'm going to do. That sounds like a great idea. It's Spend 20 hours during the week preparing your message for Sunday. It's wonderful. And we really should, I mean, we do have to take that time. So that not being fed syndrome is twofold. It's on the part of the people, the expectation that they need to be entertained, or they need to hear what they want to hear. It's on the part of the priest or the deacon that we need to preach the truth in season and out of season. So these are the top 10 reasons that Patrick Madrid, and I agree with him, he sees that Catholics leave the church or non-Catholic Christians will never join the church. And for the next 6 weeks, I want to focus on each of these and kind of counteract them and see how we can begin to work with these. Now you might say, well, Father, how do we know which Mass it is or anything else? All the homilies are on YouTube. Get your young tech-savvy people to get you on YouTube and just put in our names and it will come up. But if you cannot get on YouTube, what was said this week and what will be said next week will be in the bulletin. It can be read right there, right next to the number that says this is how many people came to Mass and this is how many people should be coming. You know, this rich young man, he walked away sad. And the Greek is very clear. In English it says he walked away sad. Well, that could be a number of things. The Greek word essentially translates as he walked away saddened as though he had lost a loved one. Saddened almost to the point of despair. That really sends a clear message. That everything he was looking for was right in his face. All he had to do was accept it. We don't want to be the rich young man. Our Lord is appealing to us, especially during this year of faith. We don't walk away sad. We take those things that are separating us from Him and we rid ourselves of those so that we might be close to Him and that we might reach out to others to bring them back.